I planned my wedding for months. Every little detail, every flower, every seat. Holding on to the small hope that my parents might finally show up for me. But on the most important day of my life, their seats sat empty. Not because they forgot. Not because of an emergency. They simply chose not to come. Why? Because in their eyes I'll never be enough. Not compared to my younger brother Eric. The golden child who could do no wrong. The one whose achievements always overshadowed mine. Whose needs always came first, even on my wedding day. That was the day I stopped pretending. What followed was a wave of guilt, grief, clarity, and ultimately peace. But it wasn't easy. It took years of emotional manipulation, subtle digs, gaslighting, and watching my own family try to rewrite history to make me the villain, just because I dared to tell the truth. This is the story of what happens when you stop chasing love that was never truly offered, and start building a life on your own terms. Before we dive into this story, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, for listening, for sharing your time with me. Whether you've been following along since the beginning or you just stumbled across this video, I want you to know something. Your presence matters. Your support, your comments, your messages, your kindness, has meant more to me than I can ever fully express. Telling stories like this, especially when they hit so close to the heart, isn't always easy. But knowing that there's a community of people out there who get it, who have lived through family pain, who know what it's like to feel invisible in your own home, that's what keeps me coming back. So if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unappreciated by the people who were supposed to love you the most, you're not alone here. I invite you to leave a comment as you watch. Share your thoughts. Tell me if any part of this story resonates with you. Or if you've been through something similar, share your experience. Not just for me but for others who might need that reassurance right now. Alright, with that said, take a deep breath. Settle in. Let's get into the story. About a year ago, I married the love of my life after 6 wonderful years together. I dreamed of that day for ages, not a fairy tale but something beautiful. We booked a scenic venue in Asheville, North Carolina, surrounded by fall colors. But even as I stood there in my white dress, I couldn't ignore who wasn't there. My parents and my younger brother Eric. They didn't even RSVP. Eric, now 27, has always been the favorite. Not just favored, practically worshipped. From kindergarten to college, he's been the star of every show. First chair trumpet in middle school? They threw a barbecue. Dean's List in college? Champagne and lobster dinner. He made the local news once for organizing a charity fundraiser and they framed the article in the hallway. Me. I'm a 35-year-old ICU nurse. I graduated magna cum laude, work night shifts, and I've held strangers' hands as they've taken their last breath. But when I got my nursing degree, my dad barely looked up from his newspaper. My mom once told me, "We're just not the kind of family that brags about medical stuff." The lack of acknowledgement wasn't new. When I was 12, I overheard my dad saying I'd never have the looks Eric had. I was sent to fat camp the following summer. My lunches were diet bars while Eric had steak hoagies. And God forbid I complain, the comparisons would just come faster. So I kept trying. I signed up for extracurriculars they suggested, took summer classes, even auditioned for the high school play just to be more like Eric. I didn't make the cut. He still teases me about it at every Thanksgiving. But their absence at my wedding was my final straw. They said they couldn't make it because Eric had a networking event in Boston that weekend, and they didn't want him to miss out on a career opportunity. No phone call. No card. I was crushed. After that day I stopped reaching out. My therapist once told me, "You don't owe people access to your life just because you share blood." It stuck with me. I found peace in my marriage, in my friends, and in patients who hold my hand and say thank you. That's more real than any photo on a mantle. My parents made their choice. And now finally I'm making mine. But no matter how much I accomplished, it was never enough. By the time I turned 30, I finally gave up trying to win their approval. I redirected that energy toward building a life that I could be proud of, on my own terms. I focused on my work as a nurse, poured love into my friendships, and surrounded myself with people who actually valued me. And honestly, that's when things really started to change. My life felt lighter. More mine. Because I knew how obsessed my parents were with appearances, I kept our relationship on the surface. Holiday calls, the occasional birthday text. Nothing more. They didn't notice. Or if they did, they never said anything. They had Eric to keep them entertained, and I'd learned not to expect more. It was during that period that I met Alex. my now husband, at a local hospital fundraiser. A mutual friend introduced us over a plate of cold crab cakes, and we hit it off instantly. He was the first person who actually saw me, not the version my parents ignored or tried to reshape. Alex loved my sarcastic sense of humor, my compassion for patients, and even the body I had spent years being criticized for. He never once hinted I should change. He made me feel like I was enough, exactly as I was. 5 years later, he proposed on a quiet Tuesday night at home, curled up on the couch with Thai takeout and reruns of Frasier. No grand gestures, no flash mobs. Just us, real and steady. And I loved every second of it. I told my parents the next day. Their response? Silence, followed by my mom asking if I was sure I wasn't rushing. Then she suggested I tone up a little before dress shopping. My dad, predictably, muttered something about how weddings are expensive, before pivoting to Eric's recent trip to Greece. At our engagement party, Alex noticed their coldness long before I did. While I was floating around chatting with friends and cousins, he found them in the corner, whispering into my mom's phone. Turns out they were on the line with Eric. My husband overheard phrases like, "This wasn't the plan," and "We never thought she'd get married before him." The next morning when I asked about it, they waved it off. "Just updating Eric on family news," Mom said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The wedding planning phase was littered with little red flags. My mom had 3 separate Pinterest boards for Eric's future wedding, despite the fact that he was very much single, and couldn't even feign interest in helping me pick a venue. When I showed her the A-line gown I'd fallen in love with, she said, "Well, it's appropriate for your figure." That was it. Luckily, Alex's mom, Diane, stepped in like a dream. She held my hand through every cake tasting, every florist meeting, and even stayed up with me during a late-night meltdown 2 weeks before the big day. When it came time to finalize our guest list, Alex and I reviewed every single name with care. We made sure everyone we loved had a seat at the table, even if some people didn't bother to show up. I'm certain my parents received their invitations. We used a wedding website with RSVP tracking, and their digital invite showed a clear read timestamp. I also personally hand-addressed the envelope for their paper invitation, with my own handwriting, even added a little heart under the return address like I used to on birthday cards as a kid. When their RSVP didn't come, I gave it time. Then I followed up. First with a call. No answer. Then texts. A few one-word replies about being swamped and needing to check the calendar. I emailed too. Each time I brought up the wedding, they dodged. Changed the subject. Suddenly remembered something urgent. At some point I just stopped asking. There was too much to get done. And honestly, I was exhausted from chasing people who were supposed to love me. Meanwhile, my in-laws were extraordinary. Diane, my mother-in-law, was a lifesaver. She helped me with everything from seating charts to late-night DIY centerpiece projects. My sister-in-law threw a sweet backyard bridal shower with cupcakes, wine, and a playlist full of early 2000s love songs. Everyone was warm, present, and yes, quietly aware that none of my own family had bothered to show. No one said it outright, but I saw it in their eyes, that soft, pitying look. And that nearly broke me. The wedding itself was a dream. A crisp autumn morning in Asheville's botanical garden, gold leaves underfoot and soft jazz playing as I walked down the aisle. The ceremony was intimate and warm, followed by a relaxed reception with cozy food and fire pits. Everyone kept saying how happy we looked, and we were. But there were these little moments, like seeing those 2 empty front row chairs, that hit me like a punch in the gut. The father-daughter dance? My father-in-law stepped in kindly, gently swaying with me to Louis Armstrong. It meant the world, but it also stung. That night back at our hotel, I finally broke down. Curled up in Alex's arms, I sobbed, not just from the day but from everything I'd pushed down for years. After the honeymoon, I called my parents. I needed closure. They picked up on the 3rd ring. My mother was furious. She ranted about how humiliating it was that they never got a proper invitation, how she'd always dreamed of helping with my wedding, and how I had cut them out on purpose. My dad echoed her, saying they'd checked the mailbox for weeks. But I'd kept receipts. Literally. The paper invite was delivered and signed for. The e-invite was read. Could prove it all. But I didn't fight. I just said, "Sorry for the mix-up," and hung up. Later that night, Alex said gently, "You know they were never planning to come." He reminded me of all the red flags. The shocked silence after our engagement. The cold detachment during planning. The way they made everything about Eric. Always Eric. And in that moment I finally believed it. I could win awards, save lives, even get married. But in their eyes I'd never outshine their golden boy. The most heartbreaking part? Realizing that even my wedding day, a moment meant to be filled with joy, unity, and love, was twisted into just another episode in my parents' lifelong saga of curating the perfect family narrative, always with Eric at the center. Recently, through whispers and screenshots from extended family, I learned that Eric got engaged. He'd been dating someone for less than a year. I wasn't told directly. Naturally, I'm not part of the family group chat anymore. But apparently my parents are thrilled, downright glowing. My mom is posting on Facebook about venue tours, custom tux fittings, and finally getting to plan the wedding of her dreams. She's taking Eric to upscale boutiques for private fittings, and they've already booked the most expensive hotel ballroom in Charlotte. Word is they're flying in a celebrity chef for the reception. All the attention and effort they never even considered offering me. My Aunt Carla, who's always been somewhat of a neutral party, told me quietly over the phone, "It's like your wedding never existed, but this one? This one's a royal affair." But what they didn't anticipate was the quiet ripple that their behavior caused. Several cousins, including ones I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out to me after my wedding. Some sent cards. Some just called. Most said the same thing: "We saw what happened. It wasn't right." Now, many of those same family members are opting not to attend Eric's engagement party, and several are skipping the wedding entirely. Not out of protest exactly. More like quiet disappointment. One of my cousins confided that Derek had complained to him, saying, "People are bailing," and that I must be behind it. That was the tipping point. Last week I got a call from my parents. My mom was furious, saying I had poisoned the family against Eric, out of jealousy. My dad, as usual, echoed her, accusing me of damaging our family name with false narratives. They demanded I personally call relatives to correct things. To fix it. To preserve the family's reputation. But I haven't lied. When people ask why my parents weren't at my wedding, I tell them the truth. They couldn't stand the idea of me getting married before Eric. That's it. No embellishment. Just the facts as I lived them. If the truth reflects poorly on them, maybe that's something they need to reckon with. I didn't ask anyone to choose sides. I didn't have to. Watching all of this unfold has made one thing clear. I don't even have the energy to fake closeness anymore. The truth is, the pain of their absence that day has been replaced by something deeper. The realization that the loving, proud parents I always wanted never actually existed. For now, I'm focusing on the life I'm building with Alex. A life rooted in honesty, kindness, and respect. But if anything changes, I'll let you know. The day my parents started texting me about how I'd tarnished the family's reputation, I knew it was time to stop dancing around the truth. For once, I needed to say it all, plainly, without trying to cushion their feelings. So I called. Within seconds, they launched into their usual accusations, claiming I was jealous of Eric, and that I'd somehow orchestrated this entire mess with the extended family. But instead of getting defensive like I always had, I surprised even myself. "You're right," I said. "I am jealous. But not of Eric's job or his looks or anything he owns." There was a pause on the line. "I'm jealous of the love and support you give him so freely, the kind of love I never got from either of you." Silence. Then my mom's voice. "That's ridiculous. We always treated you two the same." That was it. Something snapped. All those years of brushed-off birthdays, missed events, and quiet hurt came rushing out. I told them about my 21st birthday dinner being cancelled because Eric had a second-round audition for a community theater role. About how they paid more for his prom tuxedo than they did for my entire college textbook list. I reminded them how they skipped my honors ceremony in high school because Eric had the sniffles, and then still managed to make it to his soccer practice the next day. My dad tried to interrupt, called me dramatic. But I wasn't stopping. I told them how my mom spent years curating Pinterest boards for Eric's imaginary wedding, but never asked once about mine. How Diane, my mother-in-law, was the one who helped me pick flowers and sit through cake tastings. And how their empty seats at the ceremony were like a wound I couldn't explain, not to friends, not even to myself. I told them how it felt to lie about why they weren't at my wedding. To watch Alex's relatives look at me with sympathy, knowing something wasn't right. and how all they ever did was minimize my pain. My mom finally broke in, voice sharp. If you felt this way, why didn't you ever tell us? I nearly laughed. Because every time I did, you told me I was imagining it. That I was being too sensitive. That I was selfish for wanting the same love you handed to Eric without hesitation. My dad called me unfair. Accused me of turning the family against Eric out of vindictiveness. But then my mom said it, the line that made everything crystal clear. We never thought you'd go so far as to ruin Eric's wedding out of spite. But we always knew you were insecure about his success. This isn't how we raised you. That's when it hit me. They weren't hearing a word I said. Even now, it wasn't about me. It was about Eric. It always had been. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to smooth it over. I didn't backtrack. I didn't water anything down to protect their comfort. I just told them the truth. You're right about one thing, I said calmly. You did raise me. You raised me to believe I'd never be enough. That Eric's milestones would always matter more. That keeping up your perfect family image came before my emotions. But somewhere along the way you taught me something you didn't mean to. You taught me I deserve better than this. There was a long silence. Then my dad, always composed and controlled, finally spoke. Maybe it's time we stop pretending we're bad parents, he said, his voice clipped. You clearly enjoy watching us suffer. We thought you'd want to fix this. But I guess you've made your choice. My mom added the final blow. Maybe you just couldn't handle not being the center of attention. We've always tried to treat you and Eric fairly. You're the one choosing to play the victim. I didn't argue. What was the point? They had just confirmed everything I'd been trying to explain. They couldn't, or wouldn't, take responsibility for any of it. Even now, with the truth laid bare, they were more interested in defending their narrative than seeing me. So I said goodbye. And I hung up. The tears came afterward, but they were different this time. Not the aching, hollow tears I used to cry as a teenager in my bedroom. These were quiet, freeing, like something old had finally broken loose inside me. Later that evening, I sat on our balcony watching the sun dip behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. Alex came outside carrying 2 mugs of tea. He didn't ask questions. Just sat down, slid his hand into mine, and stayed there. After a long stretch of silence, I finally asked, "They're never going to change, are they?" He gently squeezed my hand. "No," he said softly. "But you have. And that's what matters." And he's right. The girl who once bent over backward for her parents' approval is gone. The woman I am now knows her worth doesn't depend on anyone else's recognition, especially not theirs. It still stings realizing they'll never be who I needed them to be. But letting go of that hope has hurt far less than clinging to it ever did. For the first time, I truly don't care about Eric's wedding. Or what the extended family whispers behind closed doors. I've said my piece. They can carry the weight now. It's not the ending I imagined. But maybe it's the one I needed. The freedom to stop chasing love that should have been mine all along. Of course, it didn't take long for Eric to insert himself into the drama. But let's just say his plan didn't go quite how he imagined. Yesterday morning, I got a long, polished text from him. Years of corporate life had only refined that smug tone of his, and it was in full force here. "What you said to Mom and Dad was completely out of line," he began. "They've supported us through every stage of our lives and given us everything. You can't just accuse them of being bad parents because you're insecure about your life choices." Classic Eric. Always posturing, always deflecting. The message went on in that same self-righteous rhythm, mixing moral superiority with veiled condescension. "I understand your wedding wasn't exactly what you envisioned, but that doesn't give you the right to sabotage mine. There's nothing wrong with celebrating the accomplishments of people who meet certain standards. Not everything has to be a competition, Louise." I didn't reply. Years of experience had taught me that engaging with Eric never led to resolution, only more gaslighting. So, I did the one thing that drives him absolutely crazy. I blocked him. Apparently that struck a nerve. A few hours later, while I was at work, Alex called me. He was laughing so hard I thought he might have pulled something. "Babe," he managed between chuckles, "you are not going to believe what your brother just sent me." Turns out, Eric had found Alex's number, probably through someone in the extended family, and took it upon himself to launch a new campaign. He started off cordial. "As Louise's brother and someone who cares deeply about our family's future, I feel compelled to reach out." But it quickly slid into absurd territory. He told Alex that, as the new man in my life, he had a duty to help me behave more appropriately. He explained how family dynamics are complicated, and how someone like me, emotional, reactive, might not grasp the bigger picture. But the piece de resistance? Surely you understand that staying in good standing with successful family members like myself could benefit your future. Louise's behavior is only damaging her, and by extension you. Alex, a senior software engineer with a master's degree and zero interest in Eric's approval, nearly fell over laughing. He really thinks I'd be impressed by his LinkedIn profile, Alex joked that night as we read through the messages together. But honestly, I wasn't mad. For once, I wasn't second-guessing or internalizing the blame. I was just amused. It felt good to see Eric try his usual tactics on someone completely immune to them. It was like watching a magician bomb in front of a crowd that knew all his tricks. And for the first time in years, I realized, I'm not playing their game anymore. This whole interaction revealed something deeper about Eric. Despite all the polished titles, accolades, and social clout underneath it all, he's still that same insecure teenager. The one who always needed to make others feel small just to feel big. It's honestly telling that, when he couldn't get a rise out of me, his next move was to try manipulating Alex. It's the same strategy he used in high school. When he couldn't needle me directly, he'd whisper things to my friends. Little lies. Subtle digs. Just enough to make them question me. Divide and conquer. That was always his style. Different decade. Same games. But now I see it for what it is. Back then I thought it was just sibling rivalry. Now I realize Eric spent our entire childhood crafting a persona that relied on me staying in the background. Every accomplishment I made had to be dimmed. Every moment of attention had to be redirected toward him. And if I ever stepped into the light, he'd find a way to pull the curtains shut. 10 years ago, his messages would have sent me spiraling, doubting myself, trying to fix things. 5 years ago, I would have been furious, maybe even cried. But now I just feel tired. And honestly, a little amused. Alex's response to his texts was absolutely perfect. Calm, direct, respectful. He replied, "Thank you for your concern about Louise's well-being. As her husband, my role is to support her happiness, not to manage her behavior. I think it's best if you direct any future concerns to her directly. Take care." That was it. Eric, clearly annoyed he didn't get the reaction he wanted, sent one last shot. "I see she's poisoned you too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." If anything, his help only confirmed what I already knew. Nothing about Eric, or the family dynamic, has changed. His attempt to wedge himself into my marriage backfired spectacularly. Instead of creating distance, it brought Alex and me even closer. We spent that night laughing about the whole thing, then started planning a spontaneous weekend trip to the mountains. Just us, no drama, no dysfunction. I've come to see that real family isn't about keeping up appearances or sticking to some fake script. It's about support. About choosing each other every day. About being free to speak honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. And that's what Alex and I have. I'm more certain than ever that staying out of Eric's wedding drama is the right choice. Let him have his spectacle. We'll be over here, living quietly, happily, and finally on our own terms. They say success is the best revenge. But I've learned real success isn't about impressing others. It's about peace and choosing who gets to be part of your joy. Surrounding yourself with people who encourage your growth rather than stunt it. By that measure, I've never felt more successful in my life. It's been about 2 weeks since Eric's spectacular fail trying to manipulate Alex, and things have taken some wild turns. My parents, clearly panicking about their reputation, have been scrambling, but the harder they push, the more things fall apart. I found out through a few cousins that they've been making the rounds, calling relatives one by one to set the record straight. According to their new version of events, I'm bitter and jealous because Eric's wedding is going to be far more elegant than mine ever was. Apparently, I'm the ungrateful daughter who deliberately excluded her own parents just to stir up drama. Their story? That I sent the invitations to an outdated email and an old mailing address. Despite the fact they've lived in the same house for over 25 years and still use the same email addresses they've had since AOL was a thing. One of my cousins told me they even showed her a screenshot of an email I allegedly sent. But the timestamp was off and the formatting didn't even match the platform we used. Total amateur hour. The best part? It's not working. Family members aren't buying it. In fact, some are sharing their own stories about my parents' long-standing favoritism. One uncle admitted that my mom once hijacked a cousin's wedding to talk non-stop about Eric's summer internship. Another relative recalled how, at her own daughter's baptism, my mother brought photo albums from Eric's school play and spent the reception flipping through them like it was her son's Broadway debut. But things reached a boiling point at a recent family barbecue. Someone asked, completely innocently, if they had seen any photos from my wedding. My mother reportedly lost it, full meltdown mode. She went off on a rant about how I've changed since getting married, and accused me of trying to tear the family apart out of jealousy. A few people were so taken aback they started recording, including my teenage cousin who later sent me a clip. Watching my mom spiral like that, watching her dig the hole deeper in real time, was both painful and strangely satisfying. It was confirmation on camera of what I'd spent years trying to explain. The irony? Their desperate attempt to protect their perfect family image is exactly what's unraveling it. Each excuse, each fake narrative just exposes the truth. They weren't absent from my wedding by accident. They were never planning to show up at all. Just last week something happened that really surprised me. My uncle, my dad's older brother, called me out of the blue. He's always been the quiet one in the family, the kind of person who stays neutral to avoid drama. But this time he broke his silence. He apologized, sincerely, for never speaking up sooner about the way my parents treated me over the years. He said he and his wife had decided not to attend any of Eric's wedding events. Watching them skip your wedding was the last straw, he told me. Some things you just can't ignore anymore. Meant more than I expected. Not because I needed anyone to take sides, but because for the first time someone actually saw it. A member of the family acknowledged that what I experienced wasn't in my head. That validation was powerful. The best part? I haven't had to respond publicly to any of this. I haven't posted anything. I haven't made phone calls or sent long explanations. The truth is doing the work for me. Every time Eric or my parents try to twist the narrative, they reveal more about themselves. Their attempts to shift the blame are so desperate now that even the relatives who once stayed neutral are quietly stepping back. People are paying attention, and not in the way my parents hoped. Alex summed it up perfectly. He said, they spent years building the illusion of a perfect family, but it was all built on favoritism and control. It was always going to fall apart. You just happened to be the first one who stopped playing along. And he's right. I'm not trying to fix anything anymore. I've let go of the pressure to keep the peace. I've stopped managing Eric's moods. I've stopped trying to make my parents proud. And you know what? I'm healthier. I'm calmer. I'm happy. Sometimes the most powerful kind of peace comes from simply walking away. And sometimes the best revenge is letting the truth speak louder than anything else. Thank you, Reddit, for giving me the space to share this, and the strength to finally stand in my truth. Turns out, sometimes the real family is the one that finds you when you need it most. If you've made it this far, thank you. Truly. Sharing this wasn't easy, but reading your comments, your encouragement, and even your own stories has been one of the most healing parts of this journey. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? Did you ever feel like the outsider in your own family, just because you weren't the favorite or didn't play the role they assigned you? Drop a comment below, not just for me but for others who might be quietly reading feeling like they're alone. Because they're not. If you have any advice for someone going through something similar, please share it. What helped you move forward? What gave you peace? I know so many people out there, especially those in their 50s, 60s, 70s, have experienced family wounds that never fully healed. Maybe it's time we start talking about it. And to everyone who's been cheering me on from behind the screen, thank you. You've reminded me that being part of a family isn't about blood. It's about how you're treated. It's about who claps for you when no one else does. And you've clapped. You've encouraged. You've seen me. If you took anything from my story, let it be this. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to stop explaining yourself. And you are absolutely allowed to choose peace over performance. Support each other in the comments. Uplift someone who's struggling. And please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if these stories resonate with you. I'll keep sharing and I'll keep standing in my truth, and I hope you do too. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being part of my kind of family.